Supporting the people of Palestine, Minister, is something I'm really passionate about. Last week, I organised a meeting for Fine Gael parliamentarians with SADACA, the Ireland-Palestinian Alliance, to discuss what is the absolute horror that is happening in Gaza. I brought this and Ireland's participation in the South African International Court of Justice case up on the floor of the Dáil last week, and yesterday I've taken part in the debate on Gaza. Today, I'm formally indicating my support for the government motion, which says stop to the death and destruction in Gaza, which appeals for safe, unhindered humanitarian aid, and most importantly, which commits the government to responding and supporting the ICJ's preliminary response. It confirms that once the case is filed, that we can intervene, just as we did at that point with Ukraine and Russia. As someone who has spent time in Palestine, I believe that the Irish government must show leadership on this issue, and I'm glad that we are showing leadership internationally. Ireland was amongst the first countries in the world to call for a ceasefire. We're already in a court case holding Israel to account, and our Attorney General will travel next month to The Hague to give evidence. We're using our diplomatic channels to assert Palestine's right to their own state, and we're providing practical support on the ground. €13 million in extra aid, €3 million to institutions like the International Criminal Court, which needs to hold Israel to account. The Israeli Defence Forces are renowned for precision, for their state-of-the-art technology and for their well-trained tactical operators. And yes, 70% of the 25,200 people who have died in Gaza are women and children, 70%. And I don't believe that a force with that big a defence budget or that advanced weapons and technology and that sophisticated a training can do that by accident. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a humanitarian rights expert, but in my view, South Africa is right. In my view, this is genocide. It has to be. I believe that Ireland should join their case, and I am confident that once the legal case has been made, that we will intervene at that point, just as we did for Ukraine. And it's important to me that we do that at the legally appropriate time, at the point when we have our evidence gathered, when we have our legal opinions finalised, so that we can actually help that case. That means having and responding to the preliminary recommendations. It means analysing and adding to the substantive case once it's published. That's how we can best help the people of Palestine, because it'll send a strong, clear, legally weighted response to the international community and to the ICJ. In the meantime, tonight, we'll send a strong, clear, unambiguous message that we need a ceasefire, that we need access to aid, and that Ireland will be supporting the International Court of Justice on this. What Israel is doing in Palestine is having absolutely devastating consequences. Entire families are being wiped out, communities are being ravaged, schools and hospitals are being knocked to the ground. And it's having a huge impact on stability right across the region. The Irish government is saying stop. It's calling for a ceasefire, and it stands ready to intervene in the South Africa case as soon as it is legally opportune. What we're not doing is intervening at a point in time when it's politically opportune, because we're not in the business of winning votes off the back of the killing of innocent civilians. We're in the business of legal arguments, of diplomacy, of negotiations, because that's what ends wars. And the sad reality is that whatever the ICJ says, it doesn't mean Israel will abide by it. That's where we are. That's why we need our diplomatic channels. Negotiations and diplomacy are what really can make a difference now, and we need to be working internationally to achieve a ceasefire, and I know we are doing that. The Taoiseach has been to the region. He's continued to support the people of Palestine at EU and UN level, because that's what achieves practical progress. There is no practical progress offered by some of the commentary that's happened in this chamber today and yesterday. Opposition tearing strips off government for saying end the war instead of ceasefire. Like, that is just not helpful. All that's doing is creating division at a time when we need unity, when we need cross-party unity, a cross-party statement to go out to the world. Right now, we need to be talking to the international community not playing to the national public gallery. And as the battle for votes and for public opinion happens here in Palestine, people continue to die. Gaza is being blown to bits. Palestinians in the West Bank are being killed, and we're starting to see instability seep right across the Middle East. We can't allow tensions to escalate. And that's what our diplomatic corps and our Taoiseach and our Minister for Foreign Affairs is committed to avoiding. Just this week, the Taoiseach engaged directly with his counterparts in Palestine, in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, in Egypt and the Arab states, and that's what we need. Minister, right now, people in Gaza are in famine. People are using animal feed instead of flour to have something, anything to eat. The IPC Global Initiative are projecting that by February the 7th, 2 weeks' time, that the entire population of the Gaza Strip will be in phase 3 famine. And what that translates as is the worst ever classification for that many people to ever be in famine in the one place, ever. It's impossible to even contemplate what that would mean for people there, in particular for children, for pregnant women, and for the elderly who are just at the most vulnerability. Right now in Gaza, a baby is born every 10 minutes. That's 10 children born during these statements here today. A nurse in Gaza has shared her story of performing emergency C-sections on 6 dead women, on 6 mothers who died before their child was born. And that is the reality on the ground in Gaza. And that is why it is so important that Ireland, which has been a lonely voice on the international stage, and I'm proud we have been, but that's why it's so important that we don't let South Africa be a lonely voice on that stage. Once the preliminary verdict has been published and analysed, Minister, we have to join their case.